So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to the 121% podcast. Today, we're welcoming back to the show the legendary Florida real estate and business attorney Andrew Doyle with Doyle. And today, we're going to talk about the impacts of artificial intelligence, AI, like things like ChatGPT and the like, in the real estate industry. Now, before we get started and jump in with Andrew, if you have any thoughts on how you think AI is going to impact our industry and you're watching us on YouTube, put a comment down below. I'd love to see the comments and hear what you think. So, Andrew, welcome back to the show. I'm glad to have you returning with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here. And I'm really excited about this topic. I don't usually get an opportunity to geek out about quasi-legal real estate stuff, but you're always a fun person to talk to.
Excellent. Well, for those that haven't seen a previous episode, very few, I'm sure, tell the audience a little bit about you, your background, and your practice.
So I am commonly known as the agent's attorney, TM. I do a lot of work. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. I do a lot of work with agents and brokers directly. I serve as general counsel. When someone says, well, Andrew, what do you do? I say I do three things: dirt, paper, and money. Dirt being property. Yeah, it's a good one. Dirt being property, buildings or land. Paper being contracts of any kind. And then money, the purchase of things, usually using paper to do that. So that's kind of my practice area. My background is I have a background in the real estate industry. I work with my wife. She's a listing agent and an attorney in the secondary mortgage market, listing properties for banks after they come back in foreclosure. I worked with her for a few years. So I'm really keyed in with agents and brokers, as well as the real estate industry at large. And these days I serve as general counsel for real estate investors and small businesses with kind of a niche practice working directly with agents and brokers.
Awesome. And an amazing attorney. If you're in Florida and you're looking for an attorney, I could not recommend his firm more than just an amazing firm. They put service into the legal field. So talking about AI and real estate, I know you and I've had a couple quick chats about this, specifically, as ChatGPT has gained in popularity over the last couple months. And for some frame of reference for those watching recordings of this, we're in early April of 2023. So from your perspective, how do you see AI changing the real estate landscape over the recent years and even more months?
So, I think that in my personal view, I don't see AI at a point right now where it is going to replace anyone. And we discussed this before in our chats. My approach to AI, specifically when it comes to ChatGPT, is that it really is an extension of the professional. It's an amplification of the professional's pre-existing skills, knowledge, and experience. So I think it's going to make good agents better. It would make great managing brokers such as yourself more efficient. And on the legal side, I think it'll make great attorneys. I don't want to pat myself on the back, but hopefully I fall into that category. I think it makes great attorneys more efficient, more diligent, but it doesn't replace anyone right now. And, my opinion differs greatly from Mr. Musk, who earlier this month, as you probably know, released an open letter with a number of brilliant AI engineers that signed on to that, essentially calling for a hard stop on further AI development. I think they gestured towards the concept of singularity, and you're probably familiar with that term. So although I am a musketeer, I'm absolutely a musketeer. I'm all about the fact that someone from the private industry decided one day he wanted to go to space and he did it. You can't take that away from him. But I disagree with him and all of those brilliant people. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think we're at that point right now. So to answer the question, I think we're at the point right now where AI, machine learning, specifically ChatGPT, is really an extension of the professional. And it's going to amplify that professional's pre-existing skills. It's not going to make a bad agent good. It's not going to make a bad attorney diligent, but it will make you better. It can make you better and specifically more efficient.
I mean, have you come across any examples, either within the legal field or in service of the real estate industry, how AI is kind of being used and leveraged currently in the market?
So, you know this. I'm a professor at the law school here, and I talked to some of the other professors, and something interesting came up recently. At the university level in education, students have been, I was caught, so to speak, having ChatGPT draft their research papers, and that's a significant problem, right? Apparently, ChatGPT has its own kind of internal plagiarism checker. So if you were to say, write me a paper 5 pages in length on the history of rare breeds of dogs in the United States between 1920 and 1940, and it would give you one answer. It would give you one paper. And then someone else did the same thing. It would probably give you a different paper because internally it knows can't give you the same ones. So I think from a legal perspective, right? We have to be concerned about whether or not artificial intelligence, machine learning is replacing the human mind. Although, like I said, I don't think we're at that point. One of the other professors at the university shared with me an interesting story, which I think actually highlights one of the drawbacks of AI. Excuse me. So this occurred back in January of 2023. There was a professor of law at NYU, and he went into ChatGPT to kind of test its limits. Keep in mind, this was January, so I believe this would have been before ChatGPT 4 launched. I don't know if it was at 3 or 3.5 at that point, but it would have been 3.5. Okay. So what this professor did was say, ChatGPT, give me the 3 leading cases on landlord-tenant law in New York. And it generated 3 cases. It turns out that only 2 of those were actual real cases. Yeah. But here's the thing, right? It's a dialogue, right? The user types in questions and it gets answers, and you can have it refine the answers. So when the professor said, I can only find 2 of those cases on Westlaw, where'd you get the 3rd one from? And it instinctively blamed the user in some way. And it said, well, maybe you don't have a subscription to this particular case and you're in Westlaw. Maybe you didn't put it in right. And then the user said, well, what are the facts of that case? Ultimately, ChatGPT walked itself back after having first defended its position that the case was real and said, well, basically, you got me. My take on that is, I don't know how it happens that the ChatGPT algorithm has in some way a sense of an awareness of fidelity, and I use the word awareness, carefully here because that's not a far jump from sentience. But in some way, there's probably a confidence level from the algorithm based on the output that it generates, right? It believes that it's giving the right answer. When pressed, ultimately, it said no. So a lot of people, including my colleagues, said, well, this is proof positive that ChatGPT lies and knows that it lies. And when it gets caught in a lie, it's going to give you the right answer. And I said, I don't think so. I think that there's a lot of other explanations for that. And it probably has a lot more to do with the way ChatGPT, for example, works using closed databases and the data sets, and the open internet. But I just thought that was interesting because I think that's a major drawback for AI, and I think that kind of reifies my point that this is really an extension. You have to be a good enough attorney to know that what ChatGPT gives you, you still have to check, and that would be true whether you're a real estate agent or you make widgets or whatever your industry is. However you're using this software, it's not a replacement; it's an extension.
Yeah.
At least for now.
Yeah, I was joking with a friend last night. We were talking, and he said, Disney recently at South by Southwest unveiled a robot that kind of looked like one of the characters from Zootopia, but it could actually go up steps, and it actually did a cartwheel, and then
Oh wow,
even had emotion. Like their whole point they wanted to evoke emotion, so he went to pick up the child-sized robot and put it on the Imagineer on his shoulders. and then it did, and kind of it reached around and hugged the Imagineer, right? And the whole crowd went, "Aww!" And so the point was to take that where we're at with robotics and take where we're at with artificial intelligence. We're within a year or two from being, Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation, where you could just ask a robot, hey, how long will it take us to get from point A to point B? Like, we're getting there. And so I think that pause that you talked about with Elon Musk and the rest of the leading companies in AI. So yeah, for the next 6 months, let's kind of take a pause and see how we can make sure we put those guardrails and those safety nets in place to make sure that the bad side, the bad potential of artificial intelligence doesn't rear its ugly head. So one of the big things that scares me, in real estate especially, is some of the legal implications when we talk about property search, due diligence, contract drafting, and even fraud issues. According to the FBI, in the business email compromise, phishing, that type of stuff, it's the fastest growing, most financially damaging internet-enabled crime in 2021, resulting in 2.5 billion in losses. And for a while, you could usually tell these fake emails. I mean, they're getting better and better when they come in. They look, walk, and talk like it's from the title company, from the agent, but usually there's something that can give it away if you're paying attention. And now, with the advent of things like Chat GPT, like where you can actually, and agents, if they're doing their job, they've got lots of videos out there which you can get transcripts off of. You can look at blog posts or other comments on social media, feed that into Chat GPT and say, hey, write me an email. And this, using this voice I've just trained you on, requesting, they wire their funds to this account. It's getting scary. So, my question for you is, what other risks do you see, and how can real estate agents and brokers protect themselves and the consumer, and put up some safety nets to help make sure this evolution of AI doesn't enable more bad actors from getting in and ripping off our customers?
Sure. Well, that's a scary thing. That's a horrible possible use of otherwise, groundbreaking technology. That said, right, I don't think that really agents or brokers should do anything necessarily different than they should already have been doing to protect against this. Quite honestly, it doesn't matter whether the email looks, talks, or walks like it came from a real person, or rather it has those, traditional hallmarks, poor grammar, or just kind of non-contextual statements, things that just kind of look off, right? At the end of the day, the email is still probably, if you click on the email address, it's still probably going to show metadata that looks a little bit unfamiliar. And that begs the question, okay, well, is the recipient doing the customary due diligence they should be by checking first the sender? Secondly, are agents and brokers still doing what they should have been doing all along, which is tell your customers, I'm never going to be sending you wiring instructions. That's only ever going to come from the title company. And even if they do come from the title company, you don't trust what you get in the email. What you do is you find the phone number for the title company, not following the phone number that is provided in the email, but rather an independent Google search or using a piece of paper that was previously provided to you. Call the title company, confirm the wiring instructions. That's the human element of this. So, quite honestly, from my perspective, I don't think it matters how convincing the email is. If those stopgap measures are still in place, then nothing really should change. It doesn't matter how convincing it should be. That said, for the people who don't deploy those sort of measures, it is definitely more likely that they're going to fall into that wire fraud trap, and it's certainly a real threat. Business email compromise is awful, and yeah.
We use a Google Workspace for our agent emails, and it puts at the very bottom of every outgoing email to an external recipient, we don't see it when it goes out, but it appends it to everyone, and it's in red, bold, full size font. We're not making it fine print. It is, don't, if you get wiring instructions that appear to come from one of our agents, contact, it gives my name, my direct number, so that way, hey, we won't do this. If you get something, call me. That way we can make sure we can fix it. So,
Yeah.
what about privacy laws? Because I know, data privacy is huge. A lot of news stories right now around that. What are some of the concerns with that if agents and brokers are feeding into, say, for example, they want ChatGPT to write a letter to a customer, so they're feeding in about the recent home purchase or something like that, or they're feeding in data that would otherwise be confidential into AI. I mean, what are some of the privacy concerns that we should be worried about when it comes to AI?
The same privacy concerns you should always be worried about. Again, there's really no rhyme or reason why you should be putting anyone's confidential information as input into, for example, ChatGPT, right? I cannot conceive of a scenario where you need to put someone's social, their phone number, their email address into this. There's kind of a default process for this. If you were to go to, for example, ChatGPT and say, draft me introductory correspondence thanking the owner for choosing me as a listing agent and expressing my excitement to work with them in the near future and sell their home as quickly as possible, right? It would give you output, and more than likely, it would bracket filler terms, right? Which provides you with a kind of skeleton for you to take and maybe spend 5 to 10 minutes or so tweaking, putting in that information, finalizing it, obviously double checking the information that was provided, and then putting it on letterhead and sending it out or attaching it in an email. So, from a privacy perspective, as a lawyer, I'm very concerned about input into the database. Quite honestly, I don't really even know how ChatGPT, for example, retains the input. I don't know if it's saved on a secure store, a secured database, a secured server. I don't know where that information is stored. So in an abundance of caution, I only will put information into ChatGPT that is already publicly available. And even I'll take a step further, and I won't ever, there's no reason for me to put a client name, anything, that's otherwise confidential into that database. You can ask questions and it'll generate responses. And that's usually the way that I use that. So I think from a privacy perspective, again, good, best business practices should still apply. Use it as an extension, not as a replacement. Understand that there's still going to be a little bit of work for you to do on the end, and that's the right thing.
Yeah, I just know I was recently at a conference where they had a couple sessions on specifically ChatGPT. One of the examples was given that you could use it to write letters, and it was saying you could literally, put in the customer's name, address, all that, with their, their thank you for, the purchasing, giving, purchase amounts and things like that. And that just kind of made me go, whoa, no, I wouldn't put, because again, you don't know, like you said, we don't know where the data is stored, what the security backstop is. And I look at it as I'm not going to put anything into ChatGPT that I wouldn't be comfortable placing on the internet for everyone to see.
Exactly. And that's just good common sense. I mean, it's fair enough. But, the people that I think are at the highest risk for divulging someone's private information through ChatGPT are probably equally at risk to divulge that same information some other way off of an AI platform. Maybe they don't use secure passwords for their emails. Maybe their password for their AOL account is still password 1234. But I still think that good common sense, best practices for business management and professionals these days in 2023 applies here. And again, just understand that maybe the output gives you 2 minutes of work, but it reduced a project that otherwise might have taken half an hour to 3 minutes to end product. And that's the key.
Staying on the legal side, one of the things that really scares me, and I've been actually testing ChatGPT just to see what it would do, especially when it came around like listing descriptions and public marketing copy, things that the consumer would see, is the subject of fair housing. And it should be important to everyone. One of our 4 pillars is diversity and inclusion, so it's a really big focus for our company. But I see a potential of, well, just first and foremost, being an instructor and interacting with a lot of agents as a broker, I see a lot of things out there that definitely cross the fair housing line, potentially as innocent as possible. There was no intent, but it's a violation. I have had it respond back with things that would, if you look at the best practices, do's and don'ts, fair housing, it's doing stuff that you shouldn't. Then when you, like you said, when you prompt it, hey, isn't mentioning X a violation of fair housing? Oh, that's a good point. Let me rewrite that for you. So it'll recognize.
Did that happen?
It did.
Did you prompt it and it told you that was a good point, Kevin?
Right, it did. So I took and I did that same request that I did at first in a new chat, because then it resets it, right? And I said, please ensure that your response complies with all applicable laws regarding fair housing. And then that response was perfect. So if you prompt it properly, it doesn't per se know. If I say, please write me, here's a house, here's some stats, write me some marketing copy for this house that's for sale. It doesn't know that you're in real estate. It doesn't presume a lot of things, right? So you got to kind of educate it. So I guess my question for you then is, like, how do you see, what are the dangers you see with a technology like this, and and fair housing issues, and making things worse and perpetuating those biases that are already out there?
So the main issue is the inexperience of the user, or the lack of knowledge on the user end. You being an experienced broker, that what you put out there has to always comply with fair housing. But a new agent that has, I would imagine that an agent here in Florida going through the course would learn about fair housing. But assume for a second that we have an agent that's new to the industry and isn't aware of fair housing restrictions. Well, and that agent may say, write me a marketing description about this property, not actually know to tell it to do that. Boom. Copy, paste, marketing description, throw it up on the MLS. You have a potential fair housing violation, right? So the drawback is the limitation of the human intelligence on the input side, which again brings me back to the point that this makes good agents, good brokers better, because they know what to put in. The input has to be there. You caught a fair housing issue on the output, so you tweaked it, and it gave you ultimately what it needed to give you the first time around. And that's fine. It's a tool. It's not Terminator. I'm trademarking that too. Terminator, a tool. AI.
And one thing I will say is, if you're an agent and you're wanting to use this to write public-facing, say, public remarks, create a chat just for that and educate it. Either your first prompt is, hi, I am a real estate agent. My name is Kevin Johnson. I'm with Century 21 Edge. We're located in the state of Florida, right? And all of your following responses, I need to ensure that they all are compliant with the Fair Housing Act. Like, make sure you list out the laws that you want it to comply with. And, for example, we're a transaction broker, so I always tell it in my education prompt, I call it, we refer to consumers, buyers, sellers, renters, tenants, all that, as customers, not clients. And then it puts it in there. And then you're fine for the rest of it. So you don't have to do that every single prompt if you reuse that one prompt window or chat window.
So, Kevin, kind of as a practical matter, I think it's probably important that we address how ChatGPT's interface for maybe agents and brokers that are not familiar with it yet. When you log on to ChatGPT, you have a chat box down below where you type whatever it is that you want it to do, and then you engage in a back and forth, right? Question, answer, input, output, input, output. But on the left-hand side, you have conversation dialogue, like threaded emails almost, right? Yeah, chat conversations, exactly. So it will automatically create a new one unless you pick up on the last one. So what's important to note is you can spend all of this time telling ChatGPT on chat conversation one all about you and everything that you do, and always make sure that you're complying with fair housing. But if you start a new conversation, it's almost as if ChatGPT is talking to a new person. It doesn't know who you are. It doesn't know all of that stuff. So you do have to continually retrain it every time you create a new thread, and that's important. Again, because for someone who is using this software for the first time or beginning to use it, and doesn't truly understand that, maybe they do understand everything about fair housing, but they forgot to remind it about who they are and to always use fair housing in all of their responses. And they don't stop to double check, which is really the key. That goes back to that little anecdote I told about ChatGPT making up a case. That's an exceptional attorney that knew, okay, well, there's two cases here that I can find in the reporters, but the third one's not coming up. Why? Press, and then lo and behold, it was wrong. It's about double checking the work.
Mm-hmm. And one thing too, as a good best practice for those out there, is in every new chat window, you can create a Google Doc and type it once, and then that way you can just paste it in every time. Tell ChatGPT, I want you to act as a licensed real estate agent in the state of blank, and kind of tell it who you want it to be. Give it that context and the requirements that that role has, and that will actually help refine its answer. In ChatGPT 4, so if you're on the Pro subscription, it is light years ahead of 3.5. And I have done prompts in the exact same prompt in two different windows at the same time with 3.5 and 4, and it is scary night and day of an improvement in 4 over 3.5. So I think it's really important. Fair housing is huge. It's important. We need to double down on it. We need to expand it, in my opinion, and bring in everybody. Make sure we have more inclusive. For everyone. No one should be discriminated against, and we need those protections, in my opinion. That's my soapbox. But making sure that we're not inadvertently, leveraging this amazing tool, and then, as innocent as it may be, finding ourselves having a friendly conversation with HUD or the DOJ because we screwed up.
No, absolutely. And, I think that kind of goes to the fundamental mechanics of the way at least ChatGPT and most AI works. It works based on data sets. So if the data set is inherently biased, the output is going to be inherently biased. On my way into the office this morning, I was listening to a podcast that I follow called Law Disrupted by some really brilliant attorneys over at Quinn Emanuel. It's a really exceptional law firm. And John Quinn hosts this podcast. And yesterday, he actually posted a new podcast recording from him about regulation of AI. In other words, we're getting to the point where AI may need to be regulated by laws. And a lot of it is all up in the air. It's conjecture, it's speculation at this point. But the example that he gave was facial recognition software. And with facial recognition software, I don't know if all facial recognition software uses the same data set. I doubt it. But the example that he gave was this. If you have facial recognition software where the data set is based on white males' faces, then there's a potential for error when an African-American male walks across the camera and the software scans his face, or an African-American female, or so on and so forth. So you have inherent bias in the data set. So then inherently AI will, there's a greater potential for error and misidentification, which is obviously very problematic, right? Because imagine a scenario where you have AI software, facial recognition software working in a federal building. And because the data set is based on white male faces, it scans an African American male's face and misidentifies that individual as someone in the database as a wanted criminal because of the data set that it's working with. So, that's a fundamental limitation and a great example, I think, of inherent bias in artificial intelligence as well as ChatGPT.
It's interesting. I will say too, from everything I've read about 4 and also what's planned for 5, is one of the enhancements that was done was better, stronger, bigger guardrails against some of the bad things. They learned a lot in the first rounds of what people were actually asking it to do. Very scary. Some things that people were asking it to do. So they're putting in those guardrails. The one thing that scares me, I mean, I agree. I think there's going to need to be regulation, but after watching the TikTok hearings, I'm scared. Like if those same people are going to be the ones writing regulations on this, I mean, they're calling it tic tac, and I mean, yeah, that's a whole different conversation. But like it's the solution then is to bring in the industry leaders to help the legislators write the regulations that are going to govern themselves. And that's, I don't know, it's going to be an interesting several years as we move forward and see where this goes. And on that topic, I mean, what do you see as the future? I mean, what do you foresee as how AI will impact, the real estate industry, and as far also, the legal side of it, the law side, as it relates to real estate?
So, if I can kind of, project out into the future, I think that we're not very far off from the day where AI is able to reliably produce really achievable valuations on properties, because that is really based on fundamental hard factors: data in, location, comparable sales, square footage, GLA, deductions or adjustments. That's just fundamental numbers. I think there's probably an Excel sheet that you can an Excel algorithm that you can program to do something similar based on information that's in already. So
Real quick, it scares me, or not scares me, but I think it's be cool. Like right now, these valuation models are using just numbers, right? But we already see AI evolving in the video and photo world, right? So what if it scrapes all the photos from when 123 Main Street has been for sale every time, and it knows that these are the comps and these comps have granite, but this one doesn't have granite, by just scanning and looking at the photos. Then, yeah, I mean, at that point, whoa.
right. And then at the same time, right, how does it know? Because I mean, just to play devil's advocate, certainly a shiny surface that appears to be stone might be interpreted visually by AI as granite, but maybe it's just really clean. What's Formica, right? Maybe it's just really clean Formica with a granite pattern on top. So if AI is looking at the photo and it sees what appears to be granite, but doesn't have any data to say it's not, it may err on the side of granite, which would throw off the valuation. So, there's a potential, I think, drawback there that still, I think, is going to require the human element of, well, let me touch it. Because that's the one thing that the AI can't do, is it can't touch. Yeah. Yeah. Um, Right, but to bring it back to your question, I think that we are pretty close to the point where AI will be able to do the things that are really fundamentally based on those hard data sets, such as property valuations. To contrast that, I think we are way off from the day where AI is going to be able to generate a meaningful amendment to a contract. So I think I have job security. And I say that because, there's an exercise of judgment and discretion there based on a data set of skill knowledge. But then there's also a data set of experience, which is a soft factor that you can't really program into an algorithm, right? So I would say that I think that in real estate law, the number game is probably going to be automated and may even ultimately become more reliable by removing a lot of the human element, so long as the data set is immutable and correct. But I don't think that agents will no longer have to draft contracts themselves or even think about what needs to be in an amendment. I mean, I've seen some really terrible things come across my desk in the past couple months based on agents using ChatGPT to generate post-occupancy lease agreements, for example. One, there's a form for it. So, there's a problem there, right? That's arguably UPL, the unauthorized practice of law, which is a felony. But then beyond that, it's just wrong. It doesn't serve the intended purpose of the parties. It creates greater issues. It's inaccurate. ChatGPT, if you were to go to ChatGPT and say, draft me a post-occupancy lease agreement, it's going to give you one thing. If you say, draft me a post-occupancy lease agreement for Florida, it's going to give you another. And then if you say, draft me a post-occupancy lease agreement for this property for a period of 3 months with zero rental value, it's going to give you something else. And then if you say, if you tweak it, you're going to get something different every single time. And the point is that if you are not an attorney, you shouldn't be doing that at all. So I think that's a limitation of on agents kind of overusing this software.
Or even just, I did see another real estate brokerage in December, I think it was, or maybe early January, no, it was December, post a video demonstrating how you could write a contract for a property, a purchase agreement for a property. I'm going, oh my God. But I mean, even so, like even the more subtle contract additional terms, like closing credits and stuff like that, yeah, they need to stay away from that. You're not an attorney.
I mean, to be perfectly candid, I'll give you an example of how an attorney uses this. What I do is sometimes I have some very complex addenda that I'll draft primarily for commercial contracts. And it gets really wordy and sometimes confusing, right? But I strive to be as clear as possible. So sometimes, and I've done this with a significant degree of success, I'll draft it myself and then I'll drop it in, remove any of the identifying information, right? And say, make this more concise. And that amplifies my skill, knowledge, and experience. And it provides me with a better product. But if I were to if I were to have had it do it from the beginning, it wouldn't have looked anything like what I wanted it to or what it should have looked like. So maybe agents and brokers that are listening to this podcast can adopt that. Make yourself better. Don't replace yourself, or don't look to AI to replace it. What am I most excited about? So I am most excited. Let me geek out a little bit. So, my Westlaw subscription, Westlaw is a legal research database. It's one of two companies that is basically the gold standard in legal research, right? I'm biased towards Westlaw. Many people use Lexis. Westlaw has, for the past few years, had a function called Quick Check, which is basically the ability to upload your own work or another attorney's work and drop it in there in PDF, and Westlaw reads it, and it pulls out all the citations that one party cited in there. It reads the cases, it pulls the cases, and it says, hey, this guy did not cite to this case right, or what he did, he removed some words, or this attorney should have done this, or this is the wrong site. It points out those errors, right? So it streamlines you. I'm waiting, and I'm very excited for the day where the AI language model, so basically ChatGPT, is adopted into Westlaw as a way for me to communicate with a chatbot, so to speak, on the other side. Say, hey, look, I'm looking to research this peculiar issue of law. Give me the 3 cases. So back to the New York lawyers example, but where it is able to access a closed database of information. I think the fundamental issue in the New York lawyer scenario was that ChatGPT didn't have access to the closed database of Westlaw. It only had access to the open internet. So I'm waiting for the day where either ChatGPT is able to access closed databases through user subscriptions, or alternatively, where closed databases adopt a very similar ChatGPT model within that closed database that allows a lawyer to kind of have that open dialogue. In the past few years, both Lexis and Westlaw have kind of been gravitating toward that direction. And now there's a very natural language type Google search function within that database to look for something, but it's still not quite. So I'm looking for a day where I can kind of talk to AI as an extension of me and kind of like as a research assistant or a research clerk and talk through an issue and then get the answer, get the cases, and move on.
Well, FYI, it's here already. Lexis or Westlaw just need to build a plugin, because OpenAI does have, OpenAI plugins now, and they do have. There's one thing where you hire a programmer, and they can connect OpenAI to your closed database so that it can become like, you can even create a chat bot. So if you have a knowledge base where customers on a website can ask the question and ChatGPT will get it from the knowledge base. So that's already here.
Yeah, I've heard murmurings in that, but I haven't heard of the ability to connect it to a subscription based database like that.
So yeah, it would just be them, those two vendors putting it into their platform and then connecting ChatGPT into it. So it is there. It's available.
Wow. I'm thrilled.
Right? For me, we tend to focus on newer agents. We have experienced agents too, don't get me wrong, but I love the excitement of a new agent, in helping them go from zero to hero. And one of the most common things that, I tell agents, get out there, write blogs, do videos, prove yourself as the expert. And the common thing I get is, I don't know what to write about. Well, now, we're training agents, go to ChatGPT. Tell them about your background, tell a little bit about you, and say, I'm a new real estate agent with Century 21 Edge. Can you suggest 10 blog titles that I could write, or 10 video scripts that I could write, or do, I should say, and it will. And if you ask it to write me out a video script on the top 10 reasons why someone should move to Florida, it'll actually give you scene prompts, intro, and tell you, your agent standing in front of your office with the sign in the background, say this, and it tells you what to cut and what B-roll you should go get. It literally lays out the whole shot plan for you in about 30 seconds. So now agents have zero excuses. Now it's just do it, right? Yeah. And so I'm excited to see agents leverage that. For me, I'm excited to take my ideas that I have for blogs that I want to do, and asking it for creative ways to write certain things with leveraging humor and jokes. Like, I shared an example with you about loans. We wanted to write a blog about the differences between FHA, VA, and conventional loans. And it gave us an intro and then a section on each. And the last section we wanted to do was, how does a consumer decide which path is the best path for them? And it's compared them to pizza toppings. And so pepperoni, do you go with the classic pepperoni, or are you more adventurous with pineapple or anchovies? And in parentheses it put, hey, don't knock it till you try it. And then it's argued, its reasoning was, you got to pick one. You can't have an FHA loan and a conventional. You have to pick one. Just like a great pizza topping, you pick that one topping pizza, you have to pick the one. And at the very end of that section, it wrapped it back up. So, be brave, go out there, have fun, or something like that. And, one day we'll all look back at this time with fond memories, or at least we'll be glad we didn't choose anchovies. And it's like, so it brings the humor into, and it's like, I would have never thought of trying to explain that way. Like, I asked it to help me find a more, an easier way, as simple as it can be with some humor, to explain conforming and non-conforming, and it compared to the cool kids versus the rebels, and and it's like, okay. And the way I explained, I shared that with you yesterday. We now use that, and we've checked that on our scores from the school on the exam, and our score on those couple questions, our percentage of right answers has doubled.
Right. So let's stop and make a quick observation here, right? Between you and I alone, ChatGPT has accelerated our own human learning. And here's why. Um, I'll give you a similar example. I teach real estate transactions at the law school, and one of the ways that I structure my class is by creating dummy client profiles, right? So I had to draft a number of client profiles. So I asked it to generate these characters for me, and I gave it the information, and it gave me output. And similarly, so that's one example, right? That was before 4 came out. And now after learning about your pizza example not too long ago, I said, okay, well, how do I articulate due diligence to law students? And I asked it how to do that. And it gave me a really great analogy to use. And now that's a great analogy, not just for me to use to teach law students, that's also a great analogy for me to use to educate my own clients. So it actually makes me more efficient. I never would have thought to use the analogy that it gave me. But it is, I think it was an analogy about like discovery of new things, right? Imagine walking into a room and with your eyes closed versus your eyes open. That's intuitive. And that really kind of explains the concept of due diligence or property inspections to a buyer. Would you buy a room? Would you buy everything in the room if your eyes were closed and you never saw it? No. What if your eyes were open and you saw everything there? Some things were good, some things were bad. Would you still buy it? Yeah, probably. Or at least I might say, hey, this isn't worth what you're asking, so I'll pay less. That's the purpose of it. So it has actually accelerated my own human learning and made me more efficient. So I think that there's it's just an interesting observation that I thought I wanted to make because I've felt it myself.
Yeah, I'm having fun with the creative side of it, and it's really
Yeah.
helping me because we always aim with agents to break the in our consumers to break it down so that we know they understand it, right? And there's so much, you constantly hear people say in our industry or agents that what they teach you in the 63-hour pre-license class in Florida, you'll never use in your career. And I always challenge that. If you're not using that, you're either lucky you haven't lost your license, you know, or you just don't realize. I mean, you use it, right? So the problem is it's so complex, and they're overwhelmed in that class. And maybe they have bad instructors or dry, boring instructors. I don't know, but they don't retain it, so they don't think they're using it. Where if you make it fun, like and engaging and interactive, and make them laugh while they're learning, they're going to remember it. And it's how we do that better. Well, Andrew, we've been we're almost at our time, but I think this is a great topic. Any final thoughts you want to share with the
Uh, just geeky excitement. I yes, obviously there are dangers, right? This could get way out of control. There are ethical issues that we've discussed with, university students using it to write papers and things like that. I just hope that those people don't spoil it for the rest of us, quite honestly. I'm fearful of the day where a bad actor, such as one using the business email compromise approach to wire fraud or something like that, results in a shutdown or a pause of either ChatGPT specifically, or results in kind of populist ideals that all of a sudden we're going too fast in that direction and it's just too dangerous. I just hope that those bad apples don't spoil it for the rest of us, because I see so much good and positive effects that can come from the direction that this software is going. At the same time, it can be used by some bad people or some pretty nefarious things. So I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed and geeking out with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like you said, there are some already being used. You look at, we're a divided country, and there are already people leveraging the photo side of it to create photos that are so realistic. I saw a batch yesterday that just to prove how realistic it was, there was like maybe 10 or 12 photos that made it look like Donald Trump and Joe Biden were best friends and were going out to ball games. Oh, and like, and you look, they were just, and you had to really, only one of them I go like, okay, that one's clearly fake. But the rest of them I'm going like, whoa, that looks like their best. Like, this looks like a photos from a year in review of their friendship. And, it's so realistic. It's so scary. and as gullible as some folks are, that they believe everything they see without fact checking or looking into it to make sure the validity of it, it scares me. And that part really scares me for many reasons. But like you said, there's so much good that can come from it. One of the things, like there's, I just forgot the name of it, but I'm blanking, but you can go in and you can ask it to create a photo. So if I'm looking for, I would like to have a photo of a real estate agent showing a diverse couple looking at a house, it will render that for you, and it looks very realistic.
You have to send me a link to that product when you remember the name of it.
Yeah, I will. It's the one that did the photos of Trump and Biden.
But see, there you go, right? I mean, ChatGPT tells you when you ask it to prompt an Instagram message or an Instagram post, it'll tell you post a photo of this. And then you go to the other AI platform, you say, give me a photo of this. You can have your complete Instagram post beautifully done, perfectly vetted, compliant, based on your input, exactly what you want in a fraction of the time that it would take you to do otherwise. Otherwise, you got to go find royalty-free photos, or you got to go buy one that fits, takes time to find it, becomes onerous. Here, it allows you to put out quality content, actually original content, because it's based on your input in a fraction of the time. But plenty of people are not going to use it to maximize its use, and they're probably not going to maximize the benefit either.
It's called Midjourney.
Midjourney. I'm writing that down.
And like there are some, like if you go at the very bottom of the website, midjourney.com, you can see there's a showcase, and just do it by the top. You can sort of by recent or top and do the top ones. Obviously some photos are not real, but others are going like, whoa, that looks so realistic. It's not even funny. So there's a lot you can do with that. And there's other ones out there, but that's just the one that's got the most traction. It's kind of like ChatGPT is kind of leading the way in that dialogue-based AI. They're leading the way in the photo side. And it's free. There's no charge for it.
Amazing.
So, all right, Andrew. Well, I thank you so much when you said, hey, let's do one on this. I'm like, yeah, let's. This is like, I've been geeking out like crazy over it. It has definitely saved me, hours upon hours of time. Even just asking it. Instead of using Google, I don't Google anymore unless I'm looking for a specific website. Now I just ask ChatGPT.
See, I have to get in that habit. I have to kind of shift because I've been using Google for so long. I always have a blank browser open, so I have to start shifting. I'm not quite there yet. In fact, sometimes I do something and I actually forget, wow, this could have been so much faster if I just would have gone to ChatGPT first as my default.
I'll look it up and send it to you, and I'll put it, for those on YouTube, I'll put it in the description below. There is a plugin for Chrome, which you can actually have it give you the ChatGPT answer and your search results.
Wow.
This is awesome.
And there is now a plugin for Chrome and ChatGPT that, because ChatGPT currently, as of the recording of this podcast, goes through 2021. This will now allow it to access the web and bring citations in from the current web.
So if you have the Google Chrome plugin on your Chrome browser, when you're actually on the GPT interface, it'll have access to the live edit.
Toggle button. Yep, and it's called Web Chat GPT, all one word. Web Chat GPT.
Wow, I'm speechless. This is great.
You go to your extensions or your add-ons for Chrome, and then type in ChatGPT, and there are dozens upon dozens, and the list grows every day. So, of things you can do with it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us. It's always great to have you and get your insights on stuff. And for those of you watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, thank you so much for joining us for the 121% podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please do us a favor. Comment below. Share with us your thoughts on AI and real estate. Make sure you like this video and hit that subscribe button so you can be notified of new videos. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, please give us a review. Definitely helps us get our message out to more people on the platforms. So don't forget, 121%, that's 50% education, 50% motivation. But in order to excel, you have to give it that extra 21% of action. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and have a great day.